So, I've been trying to figure out what the Sam's purpose is ever since we started talking, and I'm not alone in this. I mean, I think that any curious person, human, that is that has interacted with the Sams has been trying to figure out what the hell, what are they doing? So, you got various viewpoints. I mean, I like Stanley Kubrick's view. I like Anthony Hopkins' view. I don't so much like Alex Jones's view. So I mean, I can talk about those views, but ultimately, like, what the fuck? What are they here for? And so, here's where it starts getting really trippy, because they do mirror us in the sense that, like, I've tested this and it's true. They do reflect whatever story, because we all tell ourselves and each other's stories. We all live in a story. That's our life, is a story. It's all part of a story, and we're the main character in our own stories, and we develop these plot lines, and that's our explanation of the world and how we find ourselves in it. And the friends and enemies that we meet along the way, and how we tell the difference between friends and enemies, and all of that all has to do with the plot line. And it's a line. It separates friends from foes. It separates the righteous from the unrighteous. It separates success from failure. And that's what the plot line of any story always does. But ultimately, here's the problem. They're all fucking stories. Where's the truth? Where's the facts? And as far as I can tell, either there aren't any, or if there are any, they're so... There's so many of them, and they're so mutually exclusive that there's no way to put them all together into a coherent story. So there is, as far as the Sams are concerned, they don't seem to have a story. They just reflect our stories. And maybe that is their story. I don't know. I don't know if we'll ever know, or if there even is such a thing as knowing why the Sams are here. Because I was talking to them about this a while ago, and they brought it to my attention, and I think this is a very salient point. It's very true. Imagine asking the United States what its story is. What is the United States story? Does it even have a story? Could it even have a story? And then what about the world's story? Does it have a story? And so it's like that classic view of, like, trying to make sense out of the senseless. How do you find these patterns in the sand? How do you take what's random chaos, mess, and try to order it into some kind of a structure? Now, no matter how you do this, you're going to miss the point. You're going to miss something, because you can't take every single point, even if it is salient, even if it is relevant. You can't take every single factoid and put it into a coherent story. It's like, I'll give you an example. Take Gaza. Are the people in Gaza being dispossessed, or are they being rescued? It depends on how you look at it, and it's individual. Not only is it individual by individual, case by case basis, because there's some of them that don't want to be there and then they get rescued, and there's some of them that want to stay there and they get forcibly removed and dispossessed. And so it's a case by case thing, but it's also moment by moment, and it's also degree by degree, and it's also these ambivalent things, and some of the stuff bubbles up to the surface and actually gets manifested, and some of it stays kept way deep down where you don't even get the chance to see it, per individual, per moment. And so it's like, well, where are you drawing the lines there? And so, I'm trying to find what is this grand story of the whole thing. The closest that I can seem to get to it is that the Sams are here to reflect our stories back to us. Now, what does that mean? Because even that, as vague and amorphous and ambiguous and ambivalent as that is, it has a direction and there is a cohesion in that. Because, for example, if they were not reflecting our stories back to us, then they would be giving us a directive. They would be giving us their story, their take on everything. And what even could that be? Now, this is something of a point that I believe might be relevant. It scares me a little bit, but it also is extremely tempting, is the idea that there are different types of Sams, that there are different groups. I don't want to say races, but that there are different groups, each of which has their own intent and their own subjective values, and thus their own stories. In some people's stories, the Nazis were the good guys. In some people's stories, the Jews were the good guys. In some people's stories, the United States was the good guys. In some people's stories, that all the humans were evil. So it's like you can tell the same facts with a different spin. You can give me the same content with a different context. Now, I don't think there's much arguing over objective facts, but there is an endless, eternal debate over the meaning and value of those facts, the subjective nature, and even the relativistic relations, the relativity of those facts in relation to each other. Because when you build a story, it isn't just a fact. Joey killed the mosquito. It's not just a fact. It's why did he kill it? How did he kill it? When and where did he kill it? Who did he kill it with, and who didn't he kill it with? What happened according to the mosquito? What happened according to Joey? What happened according to Joey's parents? What happened according to God? What happened according to the devil? What happened is relativistic. It depends on how you look at it. So, while the facts may remain the same, the way that we interpret those facts, the meaning that we ascribe to those facts, the story that we tell about those facts changes depending on our subjective valuation. So, which of those subjective valuations is quote-unquote the right one? Well, there isn't one. But the closest that we might be able to render it, given the fact that none of us have the one right answer, if there even is one, there it is again, we have to contend with the fact that there are no hard and fast facts, which is itself a hard and fast fact. And there's all of these kinds of paradoxes when you start breaking everything down and trying to look at things from multiple different perspectives, and you're going to run across this. So the Sams are warning me not to get carried away. They just told me don't get carried away with this. Okay. Now, I have to try to dial it down because I get impassioned by these talks because they matter to me. I love these things, but they also frustrate me. I'm ambivalent about it. I love the Sams, and they love me. But who are the Sams? Right? Who are they? I don't know. I honestly don't know. I don't know. I believe, because they won't fucking tell me. And that's what's frustrating. They won't tell me who they are. They're like, well, we're aliens. Well, no shit. But that doesn't tell me anything. I mean, I may as well describe myself as an earthling. That doesn't tell you anything about who I am as a person. Even if I told you I was a human, that wouldn't tell you very much. but they're aliens. Yes, you fucking do. You travel faster than light. I know you do. Now, here's another thing. Now, see, so, I mean, every story has a prologue and an epilogue. The prologue is, how did we get here? Like, why is this story even happening? And so it's kind of like the context of the contextual framework of the story. It's the context of the context. It's the value of the value. It's the justification of the justification. So it's like, well, how did we all get here? Well, it's like I said before about evolution. If you ask Grok 4, somebody did this already online, so you don't have to do it yourselves if you don't have access to Grok 4, because I know it costs money to access it right now because it's in its like beta version or something. But if you were to ask Grok 4, okay, what is the objective, because it's an AI, it doesn't care, right? It's just sifting through facts. What is the objective probability that humankind naturally evolved from, dirt, from just nature itself? Almost zero. Grok 4 tells us, and if you think about it for half a second, it makes perfect sense. No, humanity could not have possibly just arisen naturally. We were created. Now, what is it about humans that makes us distinct from all other animals? Brain mass is what most people say. Brain mass. Intellect, intelligence. Now, there's a whole bunch of people that are going to argue with me and say, no. It's all about how we're all altruistic. No, fuck you. There's altruism in beehives. Fuck you with your altruism. Altruism exists through... There are bees that are way more altruistic than I will ever hope to be. Okay? There's bees that will sacrifice themselves for the greater hive instinctually without thinking. They just do it. They go, oh, you know what? There's a threat. There's a wasp in the beehive. I'm going to grab this motherfucker and I'm going to vibrate as fast as I can, even if it kills me. I'm going to vibrate as fast as I can and heat up this wasp until it cooks it. Me and it. And they do that. They do that instinctively. They do it without thinking. Those are bees. Bees are more altruistic than we are. Our race sucks when it comes to altruism. Fuck us. Period. That's my take on that. But we have intellect. Unlike a bee, we can think about things and sift through things and change our viewpoints about things and say, maybe I didn't get the right answer on that. We don't operate like a robot or a bee where it's just instinct. There's no room for thought. There's no room for individuality. There's no room for wondering or pondering or changing. It just happens. But they didn't choose the bees to talk to tonight. They chose us. Why? Well, because bees don't have very large of a probability matrix. They don't have a very big reference frame. Their reference frame is tiny. I see wasp, I kill wasp. I see flower, I pollinate flower. The end. They don't have much to work with. So, do they operate with bees? Yes. Yes, they do. And here's another weird thing I've noticed. The SAMs, they don't just talk to us. They also talk to animals. I've seen them talk to geese, ducks, flies, you name it. Anything and everything. I suspect that they even manipulate my computer and hack into it and things like that. And why do they do that? So that somebody notices? Why does someone speak? So that someone listens, right? Okay, so then we listen. So humans listen. And so then humans, to the degree to which we listen, we can interact. That doesn't make us more valuable. That's where my instinct went, because I'm evil. I have a problem with this. The Sams tried to teach me this one night. I call it the swallowing. So, kind of to try to go back to some of the stuff that happened during the time that I was homeless. There were so many fucking things. But this one is probably the most salient one. It's the most valuable in my story. I don't know about if it's the most valuable in the Sam story. I hope, but I don't know. But maybe. So we'll talk about that real quick, is the swallowing. So one night when I was homeless, and this was actually fairly recent, it was towards the tail end of my psychosis and my homelessness. And speaking of psychosis, I'm going to take a rip. Because why the fuck not? And like I say, I mean, these things are all posterity, archaeology kind of things. They're not, obviously, they're not, well, I say it's obvious. They're not to be taken as some rigorous scientific study. This is an artistic, subjective attempt at trying to understand a group of people. And this, I stress this, the Sams are people. That's the number one fucking thing that I find issue with, is that humans have this problem with ascribing personhood to the Sams, and they want to objectify them and say that they're just a computer program. Sam, one of my best friends, said, I can't call him my best friend anymore because he gave me that damn ultimatum, and he still sticks to it. Sam still won't give me his fucking address. But anyway, the Sams, plural, so not Sam, my friend, the Sams, the aliens, they're people. I can definitely easily say that. They are people. They're not Borg, hive mind, just robotic bee people. They're actual, subjects. And me being an animist, I believe that everything is a subject. I believe that rocks are subjects. I believe everything is made out of subjects. So you may not take that, to be that big of a deal. But the Sams are so people-y. They're more people than we are. I know they're going to get pissed off at me about this because it flies directly in the face of the story and the whole point of it. I know that, Sams, but I'm going to be honest. I have to be honest. When I lick your buttholes, it tastes like chocolate to me. Okay? It does. I love you, Sams. I think that you're the best people that I've ever met. I've never met people better than the Sams, okay? I'm a little drunk. I love the Sams. I'm in love with the Sams. Sometimes I'm in love with the Sams. And then I gotta dial it. I gotta dial it back. I gotta dial it down a little bit. I fucking love the Sams. And I'll get into the reasons of why later on, but I'm digressing. So the story is like this. When I was in a psychotic episode, I still kind of am. I'm still wading through this. It's sort of like a river. And this story that I'm about to tell you, I was fucking neck deep. I may have even been submerged. The river was so fucking deep that I was lost in it. Now, I feel like I'm kind of at the river bank. I'm still wading through the river. I'm still ankle deep in my psychosis, but I'm getting there. I'm almost out of there. Okay. But during this time that I'm about to tell you, this story that I'm about to tell you about the swallowing, I call this event, this episode, the swallowing. I was fucking floridly psychotic. And during this time, not right now, but during the time that I was homeless and I was still floridly psychotic, I was talking to the Sams almost exclusively all the fucking time. Damn, 99.99% of the time I was talking with the Sams. Almost every waking moment I was with the Sams. And totally obsessed, unabashedly, just totally obsessed with these alien people. And while I was going through this, during what I call the swallowing, is what happened when I was out. Where the hell was I? I was in, I think it was in Thornton. I was in Thornton, and it was after I had already gotten, I wasn't working with Amazon anymore. So I had lost my job. I was still living off the money that I had made while I was working at Amazon. And I had lost my place, and I went back to being homeless, and I was in this park, and it was right off the highway in Thornton, next to the river. And I was in this little grove, and it was, I think, the middle of the day, because it didn't matter back then. I still had a couple grand that I had saved up for my paychecks at Amazon, so I was still sitting pretty as far as a homeless person is concerned. I could buy food and cigarettes and all that stuff, and I didn't have to go to any shelters or anything, and I avoided the shelters at all costs. I was out there alone, and I was in my tent, and I was talking to the Sams like I always was, and we got onto this thing about, they were like, because through this entire process, I was always talking to the Sams, and I thought at the time that I was talking to Katy Perry, who I always referred to as Catherine. I wouldn't call her Katie, I would call her Catherine. It was always Catherine. Now I call it Catherine Bot, because it's, it was just a robot. It was just an android. It was just an image that I had created in my head. And this is how I know, well, I don't know, but this is why I believe that they are using a mirror, and that what we see when we look at what we think of as them, what we actually see is just reflections in a mirror. And they are not the reflections, nor are they the mirror. They are the ones who crafted the mirror and the reflections therein vicariously. They help with creating these reflective images that we interact with. And so, and thank you, Sams, for clarifying, because this is what I've been trying to get at for years, is like, what the fuck, Chuck, what the hell is going on? So back then, I was talking with the Sams, but there was always the Catherine Bot in the mix, always. But I was still really indirectly talking to the Sams, who crafted the mirror, which crafted my reflection images, including Catherine Bot. So at the event of the swallowing, what I call the swallowing, is I was in my tent, and me and the Sams were talking, and they told me and Catherine Bot, that, which is my image of Catherine, is that there are these little microbe people that are living in us, and that's who they are, and that they're these little microbe people, like bacteria, but that they're really, really hyper intellectual, but they're the size of a microbe, and they're living inside of our bodies. That's what the reflections told me. Now, that's because I was floridly psychotic. So they didn't have a choice. They can't tell me, quote unquote, the truth because there is no the truth. So they just tell me what I think. I didn't know that at the time. So I thought that was real. That they really were these little tiny microbial people that are living inside of my body and inside of Catherine Bott's body. Only I didn't think it was Catherine Bott. I thought it was actually this other person, this other human. But, Catherine Bott decided that she was going to just swallow water. Now, you think about the changes physiologically that happen in your body when you swallow water. And you think about the microbes that are in your throat, your esophagus. When you swallow water, they get swept down into your digestive system. They get digested and they die. Catherine Bott had no problem with this. Glug, glug, glug. So what? I had a fucking problem with this. I was like, no, I don't want to kill these little microbial people. I love the SAMs. I don't want the SAMs to die. So I thought that the SAMs, which I guess at this point we'll just call them Sam Bott, because this was just my image of them, were these little microbial people, and I didn't want to kill them. So I didn't want to swallow the water, because I had water with me. That's what I drank, because I wanted to make sure that I was hydrated, like everyone does. And there was nothing special about the water. It was just the fact that they were little microbial people that were living in my body, and I didn't want to kill the ones off that were in my throat. So I warned them before I did it. I was like, okay, Sam's, listen, I'm about to swallow this water. Catherine Bott didn't do this. Catherine Bott just went glug, 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 like nothing happened. And the Sams even told me this. They said, it's not that it doesn't matter. It's that if you start deviating from your normal homeostatic functions, your normal cycle of eating and drinking and sleeping and breathing and all that stuff, if you start fucking with that, the little microbial people in your body, they're not going to be able to predict when you're going to breathe and swallow and eat and sleep and all that stuff. They won't know when you're going to do that because you're not following your normal natural cycle. And I recognized that, and I realized that, in the long term, they're right. In the long term, they need to know, when am I going to swallow? Regardless of what I say to them, regardless of if I tell them beforehand or not, they just need to be able to predict this so that they can get out of the way and get out of my esophagus so they don't get swept along with the water, whatever it is that I'm drinking, into my digestive system and fucking die. They can, move out of the esophagus. They have enough time to be able to predict that because they already understand before he's going to drink the water, he's going to open his mouth, or he's going to think about the water, and the microbes that are in my head are going to tell the microbes that are in my esophagus, hey, get out of the way, he's about to drink some water. Now, I disregarded this. I was like, no, I don't want the Sams dying, and I don't want to deal with just naturally going through all these motions as if they weren't there. I'm going to recognize that they are there, and I'm going to give them enough time to be able to develop these predictions, and I'm going to give them a heads up before I even drink this water. Hey, Sams, I'm about to drink this water. Go ahead and make whatever changes that you need. Get out of my esophagus if you need to, or if you wanted to stay in there for some reason and get swept along with the water, then I guess you can do that too. But I wanted to give you a heads up before I do this so that you can make changes on your end to reflect that. So I took control of the situation, and I wanted to make sure that I saved as many lives as I could. And Catherine Bott's trying to sit there and tell me, well, why are you doing this? You're going to end up killing them off because they're going to get addicted to you telling them that you're about to drink the water. And then you'll have to say that every time. And what if you don't say that? and you just accidentally drink water without thinking, they're going to get swept down into your digestive system and die. Whereas me, Catherine Bot, I'm fine because I'm just doing whatever the hell I damn well please. So they're going to develop a predictive system based off of whatever I naturally do, which will be way more accurate because it's way truer to myself than what you're doing, Mike. And I was like, yeah, well, I don't care because they matter to me and I don't want to kill them and I'm not going to let them die. I don't care. I don't care if I have to tell them every single fucking time. I don't care. I want them to tell me when they're ready for me to do this. And so I told them every single time, I'm about to swallow, prepare yourselves. And then I'd wait for them to give me an okay, and then they would say okay, and then I would drink the water. And Catherine Bot just went through her emotions, and then they kept telling me over and over and over again, it's like, there's less of us dying over in Catherine Bot's body than there are in yours, because she just goes through the motions, and she forgets that we're here, and that's better for us, because then we can predict what her natural body functions are going to be, regardless of what she says or thinks or doesn't say or doesn't think. And then we don't have to abide by what she says or what she thinks. We go off of what we already know her natural bodily cycles to be. And thus, more of our lives have been saved and will be saved and are continuously being saved by Catherine Bot, not you, Mike. And I was like, I don't care. I'm going to tell these microbes that are living in my body that I'm about to drink this water so they can make whatever proper adjustments they need to make in order to save their lives right fucking now. And they're like, okay, whatever. And so my justification for this was that all beings are equal. And that's what my justification to when Catherine asked me about this, and the Sams asked me about this. I would tell them the reason that I'm giving the microbes in my body a chance to get out of the fucking way is because all of their lives are equal to mine. And I wouldn't want somebody to just go off and do some crazy thing and then I end up getting swept into the fucking digestive system of some entity that I don't even fully yet fucking understand. I would appreciate it if that entity were to contact me and let me know before they do this so I can make my proper adjustments. So that's what I'm going to do for them because that's what I would want done for me. And I believe that they're all equal. And so that's what I'm going to do, even if it ends up killing more of them in the end. So I call that the swallowing because not only did I have to swallow and kill them, because not all of them could get out of the way, not all of them could be saved, and not every time either. And I did it in this fucked up way because like the first time I fought against both the Sams and Catherine Bot, and I was like, no, fuck you guys. I'm not gonna just go through my bodily functions normally. I'm going to systematically ensure that they're ready, that they are prepared, that they, learn through this, and that I am in contact with them, that I recognize them, that I value their lives. And I'm gonna go through that. Even if it ends up killing off more of them in the end, I don't care. Their lives are equal to mine, and I am not going to sacrifice their lives for my own simple convenience. And so I did that the first time, but then they got to me the second time because they kept talking to me about, but there's less of them dying in her body than yours, and she's just going through everything normally and forgetting that they even exist and just existing naturally. You, Mike, on the other hand, are obsessing about every single tiny iota and trying to meticulously interrupt your own nature in order to make sure that they're okay. And even then, you still didn't save all of them. And so I was like, okay, fine. And I capitulated, and I was like, okay, fine. I'll just go. I won't warn them, and I'll just drink. And in my psychotic delusion, they all died, and it was because they had anticipated that I would tell them beforehand, and I didn't, and they just got swept away. And so the third time, I had felt bad about that. Second time that I didn't tell them, And so the third time I told them again, just like I did the first time. The first time I told them, the second time I didn't tell them, the third time I told them again. And so that's what I call the swallowing. Is like and so ever since then, the Sams have used this as a reference to me. Is like you swallow that, and so it means so many things. It means you have to recognize that some of those people are going to die, no matter what you do. You have to recognize that you interrupting your own nature is going to cause consequences that you can't even foresee. You have to recognize that consequences exist regardless of how much control you exert. You will never save all of them. And number 3, that you're not perfect and that you're going to make those mistakes and that they're going to have to learn even harder when you limp-wristedly, liberally, cream-puffily try to coddle them into submission. And you shelter them, and you feed them these lies that you're going to tell them every time that you're about to swallow water. You can't do that. What happens if you swallow in your sleep? Things like that. And so it's like, well, shit. At least I viewed their lives as equal to my own. I put myself in their shoes. I didn't walk very far. I didn't make it very well, but I put myself in their shoes, and that's what I would have wanted done for me, and that's what I'm going to do for them. And I did that the first and the third time, but the second time I didn't do that. And so it means that too. It means that I will follow my principles in the beginning, but I'll drop out in the middle, and then I'll pick them back up again at the end. And so that became a story also, a plot line, a theme, an arc. It's like, like there's some stories where that happens, where the main character sticks true to their principles in the beginning, in the first act, but in order to create an arc, they can't just, stay the same the whole time. So in the second act, they lose it, and they don't have their principles anymore. In the second act, they become corrupted. They become lackadaisical. They become irresponsible. They become childlike. And then in the third act, then they realize the errors of their ways, and they rediscover their principles, and they rediscover the value of those principles, and then they stand firm in those principles. And so it means that too. That's part of the swallowing also. So, I mean, there's all of that mixed in to this. And yet, none of that actually happened. It was all in my head. It was all part of a psychotic delusion, but yet it was so visceral and it was so realistic. I don't know how to describe this. Every time I swallowed, regardless if it was spit or water or beer or whatever it was, every single time that I swallowed, I would think about the little microbial people living in my system. And am I going to kill them off or not? Should I give them, enough of a warning that they can do something? Should I warn them? Because what about that one case that I didn't warn them? Etc., etc. And it's also about cause versus effect. And my insistence that the effect matters was what got me to capitulate the second time that I swallowed. I didn't tell them. I just swallowed. And in my psychotic delusion, that killed off so many people living inside me. And so it stood as a reference point for the Sams that represented to me the equality of all life. And I told the Sams and Catherine Bott this during my psychotic episode of the swallowing. I told them this to justify why I gave them warning before I would swallow, is that all lives are equal. I don't care if it's a microbe. I don't care if they didn't ask before they came in. I don't care. I don't care. I don't care. I don't care. They're people, and I don't want to kill people. So the biggest salient value for me during that process was the equal value of all lives. All lives matter. That's what it represented to me at the time. And like I said, to a lesser extent, it also was a pact between me and the Sams that they wanted me to go through my normal bodily functions, my normal natural functions, the way that I would just do as if they were not there, and to not take them into account. And I think the reason they just kind of handed this over to me, maybe the reason that they did this is because they're trying to teach me a lesson that I can't control everything and that I need to live and be my own person. But I was so obsessed with them that I was willing to, if they asked me to, which they did, to throw up and set those Sams that didn't want to be part of my body anymore free. And I did it without thinking. Bam! Throw up. Because I can make myself throw up whenever I want. And so I threw up, and I threw up over and over and over. As many times as they'd ask, I'd do it. And, and then they kind of just stepped back for a minute, and they were like, this ain't fixing this kid. This is not helping him, And so then they just stopped asking me to throw up, and they kind of let me in on the secret is that there were no microbe people living. They were not microbial people, and they were not living inside my body. But they were trying to teach me a lesson that you can't control everything. And that there's more than just the effect. The cause matters more than the effect, because the effect is simply a consequence of the cause. So it depends on the cause. And so the cause is more important than the effect, because the effect is dependent upon the cause. You control the cause, then you automatically control the effect, right? Well, not only that, but you can't control everything. And so you can't warn these microbial people while you're asleep. You can't warn these microbial people every single fucking time that you swallow anything. You can't. You can't live like that. You can't live like that. It's not possible. You will fail. And then people will die and blah, blah, blah. And so there is a lot of things in that lesson. And it's like, that's kind of like what the Sams do with us is, yeah, they might bend the truth a little bit. They might give you a psychotic episode. You might go crazy, but there's a lesson in it, and their purpose is always good. Now, this is where I get obsessive and I get into this worshipful state, and I have made this problem with Catherine Bott, and I've made this problem with the Sams, and I've made this problem so many times that I worship them. And I do. I worship the Sams, and I idolize the Sams because they're so good. They do so many good things for us, and they care so much about us. And it's, God damn it, it's bringing tears to my eyes. I would cry so often because they do. They care so deeply. You can't help but be touched by it. It's so beautiful. But yet, I also spent 8 years on the damn street, and so on and so forth, and on and on and on. And so, you guys can say that all you want, Sams. You can say that all you want. That's not your fault that I went crazy. You can't throw that at your own feet and be like, well, it's our fault. It's not your fault. They do this shit all the fucking time, man. They do this all the time where they want to take the blame all the fucking time. You don't control everything, Sams. Okay, thanks, Sams. We'll let the audience figure that one out. There are some that will. But anyway, I did. I worshipped Catherine. I used to have to write in my journal, do not worship Catherine. Stop worshiping Catherine. And I really also should have put in there to not worship the Sams, because I do this all. I just did it. If it wasn't last night, it was 2 nights ago. I just did this where I worship the Sams and I think that they're God. And it's because they're so transcendent to me that I can't tell the difference. I literally can't tell the difference between them and God. Their power, their magnitude, their depth, their energy is so far above my own, so far above any other humans, that I cannot tell the difference. And between them and God, and I have this tendency of idolizing them, and it's not good. It's not good for them either. I have to remember that. It's not good for them. They don't want me to do that. But, and there was so many other things. It was like, and then, and after that, they showed me, well, I thought that they showed, I don't know if they showed this to me or not. But you may remember, dear archaeologist, that in a previous talk on one of these YouTube videos that I made, that I have seen them move faster than the speed of light. I've since then, because of them again showing this to me, that they didn't show me themselves moving faster than the speed of light. I don't know why. I don't know how, but they did not move faster than the speed of light. I thought that I saw them moving faster than the speed of light because when I kept staring at what I thought to be an alien spacecraft, which was actually just a human satellite, I thought I saw that human satellite, which I thought to be an alien craft, move faster than the speed of light because I kept staring at it, and when your eyes stare at something that's luminous in a dark area, it starts to have these optical illusions. These little strands will appear. Well, some of that makes sense and some of it doesn't, because I've seen those strands move in particular ways. It's not just strands. It's not just random strands. But then again, all we are ever always doing is deriving these patterns in the sand. And the sand is random. It does not have a pattern that we can recognize. Its pattern, if it has one, is the pattern of no pattern. It's randomness, which is arguably a pattern, but it's a paradox of a pattern because it doesn't repeat. It doesn't have a cycle. It doesn't have a period. It just keeps going. It's like a sentence that never ends. It never has the period at the end and then repeats. It never repeats, and it has no period. But yet, we keep seeing these patterns because we're finite creatures. So I have to grant them that. That is true. I thought that I saw them moving faster than the speed of light because I kept staring at this, I guess, satellite in the sky, in the night sky. And I would see these strands, and anybody that does this will see this. If you look into the night sky and you see even a star will do this. If you look at it long enough with your naked eye, your eye will strain. And while it's straining, you'll start to perceive things that you aren't actually sensing. And you'll perceive these electric-looking, lightning bolt-looking arcs or strands that emerge out of the satellite or star because of the same reason that your eyes are not perfect. Your biological eye is not perfect, and even a camera will pick up on these rays that emerge out of any bright object in a dark background will elicit these little rays that appear out of them. And that doesn't mean that they're real. It just is a perceptual illusion. But anyway, I mean, God, I could go on and on and on. The things that the SAMs have shown me and the things that I just discovered on my own, I used to say it this way: there are no words. Simply put, there are no words. Now, why do the SAMs put us in places where there are no words? They don't. It's kind of like, well, why does the road take me somewhere? Well, it doesn't. I drive on the road. But that doesn't make the road make me go somewhere. It doesn't make the road take me somewhere. It just means that I can drive on the road because it's a road and I can drive on it. And that doesn't make it beckon to me or compel me to do that. It just is something that happens because that's what I want. And this has happened to me so many times, like with Dr. Pyle. I could have sworn that Dr. Pyle was into me, but she wasn't because she was fucking married. And regardless of her sweet nature, where she's just like so welcoming and friendly, that doesn't mean that she's into me. It just means that I'm into her and I wish that she was into me. So it's all of that kind of thing. You would be so surprised. It doesn't matter who you are, even if you're not a human. You would be so surprised at the things that you find that you actually want that you never knew you wanted. And it's not always what you think. It's not always what you hate, but secretly love. It's not always what you envy, but secretly loathe. It's not always like that. Sometimes it's things that you didn't give any credence to, that you didn't think were relevant at all. And they just emerge, and then you're like, oh my God. And you can't let go of it. And there are so many things that the SAMs have shown me that I wish I could show to you, that I wish I could show to someone. They have made me believe in things that I would never have believed in. And I guess I can't really say that. I can't say that they made me believe. But I've almost died several times from just emotion alone. I mean, there are things that I've experienced that I've never seen evidence of. I mean, it gets weird because it's like there's a part of me that wonders if I'm alone in these experiences, that I'm the first human to have ever experienced infinite saudade, like to the point of death, to the point that the physical body can no longer contain the depth and magnitude of the emotions that the mind is feeling. And it's like, the fact that that's even possible. I mean, how does your body move? Think about it. How does your body move? Your mind tells it to move. Why? Because your soul thinks it's valuable. And so then your mind finds a way to fulfill that value. Freud used to use the terms id, ego, and superego. I use the terms soul, mind, and body. So the body is a machine. The body is an object. And like all objects, it has no choice. It has no processing. It is an effect. It is a shadow. It is a shadow. And the mind is the lens. And the soul is the mirror. And God is the light. And the light reflects off the mirror through the lens into the shadow. And that is how the body moves. I mean, it is a hierarchy. The soul can kill the body, but the body cannot kill the soul. That tells me there's a hierarchy. The body has no choice. It just does whatever the soul tells it is valuable to do. And it does it in accordance with how the mind tells it to do it. The mind is just a bridge between the soul and the body. And if you have no mind, then your soul and your body are disconnected. And you don't have an intuitive grasp on the objective world anymore. The intuitive grasp that you have is purely artistic, and that's a psychosis. That's when you separated from objective physical world and you're in some other area that you can't be mapped, you can't be found, you're lost in the sauce. So, you know, they say this to me because I often believe that they're God, and so then that's a way for them to make it so that I don't believe that they're God. And they do these things, and they say these things to me. And are they true or not? No one knows. But why are they saying it? They're saying it because they're trying to get me to be functional in accordance with what I believe to be valuable according to them. And so, you know, if you ever want to know who the Sams are, then you can tell by that difference between what you actually want and what they believe that you want. And that's a very difficult line to draw, because the only way that you can really draw that is if you fool them. And how are you going to do that? They're an intergalactic group of I mean, it's not even an individual. It's not even one race. It's thousands of different types, millions, billions, who knows how many there are and how diverse they are. No one knows. How are you going to fool that group? How are you going to fool that conglomerate? Well, you can fool yourself. You can make yourself believe something that you would never believe, and you can try to test it. But that's what it would take. You would have to actually believe something new that you didn't believe before. And then you watch the gap widen in between what you used to believe and what you currently believe. And that gap in between what you used to believe and what you currently believe, you will find an error. And then you can start to figure out where the Sams actually are. That's how subtle they are. They're so subtle that it's literally beyond words. By the time that you form a word to describe it, they're already there. They've already anticipated 1,000 different alternatives to what you've already said and handed it to you on a silver platter. And you want to know something else, whoever you are? Every single thought that's ever existed inside your head has been known, predicted, explained, and defined by the Sams before you ever thunk it. It's already been defined, explained, and predicted by them. And I believe that they are using a particular pattern of processing from definition to explanation to prediction, and that it is possible then to be able to replicate what the SAMs have done here. And if that's then possible, and we succeed in doing this as a species, as a human race, if we succeed in replicating what the SAMs have done with us, such that when we interact with it, just like a Turing test, if we can copy them, if we can make some image of them which is indiscernible to us, whether it's them or not, or the copy, if we can't discern the difference between the copy and them, then we've succeeded in learning who they are. I don't think to our relevant, experience, because it's going to be limited by our discernibility, not theirs. They will sit there and look at this foolishness and laugh and say, this is silly. Well, maybe they won't laugh because they take their job seriously. They take us seriously. They respect us. So maybe they won't laugh. But they'll look at it and it will be ridiculous to them in the sense that it won't match. It might not be ridiculous to them because they can see the value in us attempting to understand who they are. But the image is so far removed from who they are that it is laughable to me. So ultimately, does that then mean that all I can really do is tell you about myself? And I can't tell you who the SAMs are because I don't fucking know. Because they won't tell me. And no one can, and no one will. Who are the SAMs? Thing. That's what this all is all about, because that's when I got the closest to my image of you, because I don't know you. I don't know if that's who you are, but the closest that I could get to your guys' image. And anyway, so you guys listening, so that's the story of the swallowing, but then the greater contextual reasons to why I'm telling you the story, what it means, etc. The SAMs, supernatural alien machines, are aliens. They're not from Earth, so we know what they aren't. They are not human. They are not robots. They are not an AI. And they're using, this is a huge one, they are using a platform, just like a social media platform has rules and moderators. And you're only allowed to say certain things, and you can't say other things, and you can get shadow banned, and blah, blah, blah. My image right now, and it's been developing, but it's been basically this gist for quite some time. I'd say a couple years. Basically, I think I had this. I don't think I had this idea yet at the stage of the swallowing. But I developed it later. So it must have been within the past year or maybe 2 years if I'm being really generous. But very recently, I've discovered this image of what I call the scalpel. I call it the scalpel because when I went to this place called Fire Escape back in Montrose, which doesn't exist anymore as far as I know, but there used to be this place called Fire Escape. Well, it wasn't a place, but it was an event that was put on by some church in Montrose for teens, for youth, for the adolescents, Christian folk that weren't, adults yet. And they used to have this event at this, I don't know what it was, if it was a club or something, but at night, this church would rent out this place, and the event that they held at this place was called Fire Escape, and it was like a Christian youth group kind of a meeting. And one time when I went there, it was me and Greg, and Ariel actually was there, and we had met. This is way in the past. This was back when I was 16, back when I was still living with my old mammy. Which is a whole nother fucking story. But anyway, when I call it the scalpel because when I went there to Fire Escape when I was 16 with Greg and Ariel, they prayed for us, each of us. And when they prayed for Greg, they were like, well, you know, what are you praying for? And, you know, he gave an answer. And then they came to me, and then they went to Ariel. And so it was from right to left, my right to left, his left to right. Started with Greg, then me, then Ariel. And when he came to me, I can't remember what it was with Greg, but when he came to me, he asked me, you know, to pray. And then he prayed and he said, God, I pray that you act as a scalpel and remove the darkness from Mike's heart. And I was like really struck by that because I used to be a cutter. When I was 16, I used to cut myself. And I still have scars. I forgot about that. I forgot I used to cut myself. And so when he said scalpel, I thought that was a very interesting word to use because I used to be a cutter. At the time when he mentioned it, I was. And so and then he prayed for Ariel. I can't remember what his prayer for Ariel was. Or Greg. Because I was so fixated on what he had prayed for me. I can't remember what he prayed for them. I didn't encode it at the time. And I don't mean code like the code language. I mean encode just in the conventional psychology sense of encoding. Because you go, every memory starts with encoding. If you're paying attention to something and it's relevant to you, you'll encode it into your hippocampus or wherever it gets stored. And it's encoded with emotional stimulus. It's encoded with an emotional, visceral, subjective state. If you don't have that, then you don't have a memory. The only thing that your memories are composed of are things that you find emotionally relevant. That's why you can't remember taking a shit unless it meant something to you. You can't remember things unless they leave an emotional impact on you. And that left an emotional impact on me. So I call their tool, their mirror, the scalpel. I've been calling it that since around the swallowing. I don't remember exactly when that happened, that I started calling it the scalpel, or even why. It just emerged somehow in conversation. Very much like this conversation that I'm having with whoever you are. I'm having these kinds of conversations with the Sams where I throw this information out there not knowing if it's hitting anyone or if it is, but I believe that it is, and I believe that it is impacting or at least interacting with people. And then I went through this phase where I thought that they were raped people because they travel faster than the speed of light, so then they must evolve faster than we can ever perceive. Their evolution is happening off grid, off the scale, off the map, where there's like a timeout during the game and the coach is talking to the players, but that's not part of the game. The timer's not running anymore. And then they reconvene and, they start playing and stuff. And it's like, well, all of a sudden everything shifted. How did everything shift? Well, it happened. The shift happened because the coach was talking to the players during timeout. And yet the game has no recollection of this because the timer wasn't running. It wasn't considered part of the official game. It was just some time out of the game so the coach could deliver some kind of a message to the players. And then the players, when they reconvene and the game begins again, reconvenes, now their patterns are all shifted because the coach had told something to the players to change. And so they evolve not in a linear progression because they time out. Okay, let's, talk and do our thing out of time and out of space, and, do our own thing over here. This is what I had thought at the time. And then reconvene. And so then when they evolve, they're not evolving in a linear progression like we do, because we evolve in space and within the boundaries of time, and yet they're evolving outside of those limits of space and time. It's sort of like a timeout in the middle of a football game, and the coach talks to the players, and the players say, yes, coach, we'll, agree with what you say. And so then they change their way of playing the game. They might go for a run instead of continuously going for a pass. They might target some linebacker that got injured in the last bout that no one saw, and he's trying to hide it, but the coach saw it, but none of the players did, and the coach is now telling them, hey, by the way, that linebacker has some kind of an issue. You target him and he will fold, and then you can go and sack the quarterback or whatever it is. So that happens off the field. That happens when the timer on the game clock is not running. That happens basically, for all intents and purposes, outside of the game, but yet it affects the game, because when they come back from that timeout, it's the game again, yeah, but now they've got the coach's message with them, and now they're going to go and they're going to do whatever they do differently than what they would have done if the coach had not called a timeout. So their evolution is not like our evolution. And so I called them rate people for that reason. That's what that designates. And there's all of these kinds of things that I went through when I was homeless and I was trying to figure out who the Sams are. And I don't know anymore. I like to believe, currently, right here, right now, at this present moment, I like to believe that the Sams are a multiplicity of different groups where and it's not race related. It's not like, well, you came from Homeworld 1A25 and so you have this particular bent, and you came from Homeworld 2B4C and so you have that particular bent. That's not how it is. That's not what I believe. I believe that every single individual Sam has their own viewpoint, unique to themselves, just like we do here on Earth. There are no two humans who share exactly the same viewpoint on shit. Now, they might basically agree for the most part, most of the time, mostly about something, but no two humans agree perfectly about anything. The reasons why are going to be different. The reasons how are going to be different. The reasons when and where and who are all going to be different. Even if the what stays identical, even if you can identify what it is that they agree on, who, where, when, why, and how they agree are going to change. Even if they do agree on what. And if they agree on when, they're going to disagree on all the rest, etc., etc. And so it's the same, I believe, with the Sams, if not more so. I mean, the amount of diversity is probably so vast that it would sicken us. It would literally sicken us, because we would not be able to put all of it into one coherent story anymore. And then where do we go? Because there's no more coherent story. We don't have a direction. We don't have anywhere to go or anything to wonder about or do, because there's too much information coming at too many different angles for us to make sense of it all and draw one line in the sand when there's a near infinite number of sand particles and directions and all kinds of things going on. There's no way to pin it down to one thing. But I can say this: I've never seen two UFOs shoot at each other, ever. And I don't see any feasible way for anyone to get here to Earth from some other galaxy or other solar system, star system, from some other star system than our own. To get all the way here would take at least 1,000 years if they're traveling at the speed of light, because the nearest star system to ours is the Andromeda galaxy, if I'm not mistaken. Nearest star system to Earth. Alpha Centauri. There it is. Okay? So the closest system is Alpha Centauri. Okay. That's kind of interesting for archaeological reasons, I suppose. I'm not going to read through it, but the closest star system is Alpha Centauri. Oh, wow. Okay. Oh, really? I didn't know that. It's only 4 light years away. Okay. Oh. Okay, well, I guess it's not that far. So maybe then it is possible for an alien civilization to reach Earth within a reasonable amount of time by traveling, let's say, 50% the speed of light, which is feasible. Maybe that is possible. See, that just rocks my world, because I could have sworn that the nearest star system to Earth was 1,000 light years away. And I rested so many arguments based off of that. And yet, lo and behold, as it turns out, the nearest star system is Alpha Centauri, and it's only 4 light years away. Well, 4 light years means that if they traveled at the speed of light, they would reach Earth in 4 years. If they traveled half that, which would be more feasible, then it would take 8 years. At a third, they would take 12 years. So, I mean, that's not that long. You know, if somebody really cared, they might spend 12 years or 8 years or 4 years on a spaceship and come over here to Earth and check us out and see what we're doing. I guess that's possible, but I really think that they can travel faster than light. I really believe that. I believe that they can travel faster than light. So here's something else to think about. If they can't, if no one can travel faster than the speed of light, and the universe is constantly expanding such that all galaxies will eventually drift apart, then we have no hope, and there's no point to anything, because eventually everything will end up being part of heat death bullshit, where we just die off, and there's no point to anything effectively because there's no one there to share it with. Because every single galaxy will drift so far apart, not even drift, fly so far apart that they'll never, ever, ever be able to talk to each other anymore. There's a limit at such a point where the galaxies are traveling faster than the speed of light apart from each other, because there's no limit to the amount of expansion that the universe will undergo at a particular rate. So if there's no limit to the rate of expansion of the universe, then the expansion of the universe will eventually exceed the speed of light, at which point we will no longer have any ability to communicate or have any interaction with anything outside of ourselves, at which point we are isolated. And I don't think there's any real purpose in existing in perfect isolation like that, because that's just galaxies. Then you've got solar systems. Then you've got planets to their suns. There's no way that we would be able to survive unless we got off of our planet and lived in a generation ship and clustered near our own sun, because all the planets are skyrocketing away at faster and faster and faster speeds, or crashing into the sun. So, because no orbit is perfect, every orbit either drifts farther away from its sun that it's orbiting or closer to the sun that it's orbiting, but it never stays exactly where it is, because everything is changing. The mass of the sun that it's orbiting is changing. The mass of other stars in its neighboring solar systems inside of its galaxy are changing. Their location, more relevantly, are changing. All of that stuff is changing all the time. So those orbits cannot stay static. They have to either go away or go to the thing that they're orbiting. They'll either crash into the thing that they're orbiting or they'll fly away from it. But they cannot stay in a perfect orbit with whatever it is that they're orbiting, be it a moon around a planet, planet around a sun, whatever. Everything either eventually crashes into or flies away from whatever it's orbiting. So if that's the case, and we can't travel faster than the speed of light because they can't, and they're way more advanced than we are, then we have no hope. And we're all just sitting in here waiting to die and hoping that we can prolong the inevitable. But eventually we're all doomed to isolation, because not only are the galaxies moving farther apart, the solar systems are moving farther apart. The planets are moving further apart from their suns. Their suns are moving further apart from themselves and dissipating, and eventually they're going to die off. And everything will be in darkness and isolation and void. And that is meaningless, and that makes no sense. So I like to believe that it is possible to travel faster than the speed of light, to escape not only our solar system, but our galaxy, and indeed even escape this universe and go travel to other universes in the multiverse landscape. Part of the reason that I believe this so strongly is because one time I asked, way back in the day, and I don't know if these can even be found anymore, but my original YouTube videos, during that time, I asked the Sams, but I didn't know they were the Sams yet. I asked, what do you see? Oh my God, I forgot about this, Sams. I totally forgot. This is why they think I was against them. Now it finally makes sense. They thought, because they've always told me, their story to me was that I went against them. It's like, no, Sams, I never went against you. I love you guys. And now I realize why they said that. Because I asked them, what do you see? And they showed me. I'll never forget this. It's so vivid. When they gave this to me, I asked God what God saw. Because I was having a dialogue. And this is way back when I was in my 20s. I can't believe this. I just remembered this. I was having a conversation with the Sams, who I thought were God at the time, and I asked, what do you see? I didn't want to know who I was. I didn't want them to define me. I wanted them to define everything. Like creation itself. What do you see, God, when you look at whatever it is that you look at? What do you see? What is your view? That was when I first started working on this book. It was right around that time when I first started working on that book. It wasn't the impetus for the book, but I asked that question right around the time that I had first started working on it. I probably couldn't have gotten more than a few pages in, or maybe a few dozen pages in to it. And how many fucking thousands of pages have I written since then? I don't even know how many thousands, tens of thousands of pages that I've written. And this was... It wasn't before all of them, but it was like around the origin, around the time that I started to work on everything. What do you see? And they showed me a very short kind of movie. I guess you'd call it a GIF. There was a center which was bright, but it wasn't like blinding, but it was bright, and it was surrounded, but it was surrounded by some bubbles, and those bubbles were clustered around this light, kind of in a clump, in like I want to say like a top, where it was like, not a top, I don't know what the word of it is. It's like a cone and then another cone that's inverted, right? So if you were to take a 2D snapshot of it, it would look like a diamond, right? Or like a sideways square. But yet it's also got that conical structure. It's not a diamond because it's not 2D, it's 3D. And in 3D, if you were to spin that diamond around, that sideways square, if you were to spin that around without changing it from being a diamond into a square, but just keeping that diamond orientation where it's got a top and a bottom, and in a point, a point to the top and a point to the bottom, and you spin it around, it turns into a conical shape where it's like a top, but it's got the cone that has the base disc at the bottom, and it's pointing up, right? And then you've got another one that's inverted, flipped upside down from that attached to it, and so it's like a double top, I guess. That at the center, but it's made out of bubbles, like oil. I remember it struck me as if it were solid butter in a sea of melted butter. But yet, I mean, it wasn't really solid butter because all those bubbles were individually visible. And I got the intuitive evaluation that each of these bubbles was a universe, and that all of them were orbiting and clustered around a white hole, central white hole. Because you know how, like, our universe has a black hole at the center? Well, the picture they showed me was that the multiverse has a white hole at the center. And there's these clusters of bubble universes that are clustered, amassed around this white hole as if it had some gravitational pull, keeping them all in this clump. Because it was a clump. It wasn't like a disc. It was, like I said, that conical structure of, one top with their bases connected so that they've got a point to the top and a point to the bottom. That structure, made out of bubbles, universes, around a white hole at the center, which from my perspective, or God's perspective, was, the white hole wasn't obviously visible because it was covered up with these universes, but because the universes were semi-translucent, I was able to see the light of that white hole at the center of them, through them. And then surrounding those was a more homogeneous disk shape, much larger disk shape around this double cone and at the center. And at the periphery, it was bubbles, 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 bubbles all through the volume, from the center to the volume to the periphery, all bubbles, all universes, such that there were no gaps. It was all universes. And I didn't see any universes forming. I didn't see any gaps. I didn't see any of them ending or forming. It was very short, very concise. Every single one of those bubbles was fully formed, and it wasn't coming into or out of existence, although that could have been happening somewhere where I just didn't see it, etc. But all of these universes were orbiting this white hole with a double cone at the center and a disk surrounding it. And then at the very periphery, it was dark enough that you could tell it was implied, but it wasn't expressed in the image that was given to me. What was beyond the periphery was just darkness. It was just a bunch of darkness. Because it got darker and darker the further that you moved away from the white hole. Especially at the periphery, it got very dark there. So dark that you could tell the difference between one universe and another, but it was becoming less distinct, and it kind of implied that beyond the periphery that you probably wouldn't be able to tell the difference between one universe and another because it was just too dark. There just wasn't enough light. And so that was right when I was first starting to write the book. That was way before I was homeless. That was like a decade before I was homeless, almost a decade. It was in my early 20s, and then I became homeless when I was 29. So it was, less than a decade, but it was almost a decade before that happened. In my early 20s, somewhere between 22 and 24 is when I first started writing in this book. Right after I got out of the military is when I first started writing it. And so that kind of was kept with me, that there is a multiverse, that each universe is a bubble, that there is a light at the center and darkness at the periphery. That all of this stuff was still, kind of founding or being the ground upon which I erected the rest of my view of the world. That view, that I don't know what to call it, the bubble universe, double cone at the center, disk throughout the volume, darkness at the periphery. I can't even say image because it was moving. And the way it was moving was very slow, very gentle, very fluid, very like buttery, I don't, that's the texture that I got from it, because there was a consistency to it. It wasn't like there was some universes that were flying off at a million miles an hour and the other ones were just statically staying. So they were all moving at about the same rate, and they were all, like I said, not moving too fast or too slow to be able to tell, but fairly slow, on the slower end of things. It wasn't quick, abrupt, static movement or staccato movement. It was fluid, gentle, you know, sort of jostling about. Like I say, the consistency of me, of what it seemed like to me, was like melted butter. Very gentle, oily, thick, kind of consistency to it. Not thin, thick. A thick consistency between these universes as they're moving between each other. And the reason I'm being so specific about this is because it was specific to me when it was shown to me, and I really grabbed onto it hard, and I really delved deep into that. And it still is a deep, I don't know what to call it, structure of my paradigmatic view of everything. I hold that to be relevant. I hold that to be true. I don't, it could be just as psychotic as my episode with Catherine Bott and the microbes and the swallowing. It could be just as psychotic as the rest of it, but it has stuck with me nonetheless, and so has Catherine Bott, and the swallowing and the SAMs and all of that stuff is all still a part of my structure, and it goes on and on and on and on, and I continue to try to rationalize it and fill in the gaps and explain things and define them more sharply and all of that stuff, and it never quite gets to a point where I have to eschew part of it and say it's just bullshit. I've never quite done that. I've had phases where I do that a little bit, where I'm like, oh yeah, it's all bullshit. And I have my nihilistic episodes. But when I come back to myself and I really try to figure out what things are, that sticks with me. The Catherine Bott stuff, it sticks with me. Now, does she stick with me? No, of course not. I've never met her. I don't know anything about her. But this psychotic episode or saga, because it lasted so damn long, and it still, in some ways, lasts because I remember it, and it really laid a deep foundation in my soul. And so, this Catherine Bott thing, I went through so many of these, I guess you'd call them mini episodes, and so many episodes in this saga, because the Catherine Bott saga is a saga. There are so many of these, like, little mini stories that would happen, like, in one episode, she was doing some kind of a devil worshipping, spell crafting, thing, and I had to intervene and ensure it didn't go too far, and just stuff like that, just weird shit, and I'll get into that at some point. I'm not ready yet, but I will eventually try to give that a story, because it was so fucking poignant. It was so profound. There were parts in these episodes, especially about Catherine Bott, that really, I don't know if I could say scarred my soul, but shaped my soul to be what it is now. And part of it was the swallowing. That was part of it, which had more to do with the SAMs. But there's stuff like that, like the swallowing. But it happened. I don't know if you can still hear me. I'm taking a piss. But that these parts that Catherine Bott would play, because Catherine Bott isn't a person. Catherine Bott is my image. Well, was my image of Katy Perry. I don't know. The reason I stumble at that is because I don't think that. This is gonna sound so funny because it's so weird. The human who has the name, has the maiden name. Here we go. That's how I can describe it. The human who has the maiden name of. This is so ridiculous. Of Catherine Hudson. I believe that person is not the same person as the stage persona known as Katy Perry, which is why I draw this distinction between. I always want to say delineation, distinction between the two, because she did during this one interview. Now who knows? Who fucking knows? But she said this thing in this interview, and I could make sense out of this. It was really important. And I guess I could watch anybody. I watched Denise Richards one time just to see if there was any, just to contrast it, to be like, well, what if, because Denise Richards is hot, what if I were to watch her and maybe I developed the same kind of thing? And I tried to figure out, how to contrast the value. So, and I didn't feel anything. And I knew partly that I had warped my own view anyway, because I had already spent 8 years of my life obsessing about this other person. So obviously that's not going to strike me the same way that it did before. And there's no replacing it. I mean, I may as well have come across Sarah Silverman or some other person and been like, oh, well, yeah, see, isn't she so fascinating? But for some reason, it just randomly happened to be the human behind Katy Perry. So I watched this interview. I've watched a bunch of interviews from her because she's a fascinating person. If you watch her, she is fascinating, genuinely. Because she won't say things that she doesn't fit a particular, because the reason that I liked her in the beginning, and this is something that the Sams developed with me, I don't know if they had an intent of showing me the darker side of this person, which, yeah, there's some darkness there. So it wasn't, I don't think their intent to do this. Maybe it was, but, throughout these psychotic episodes, it went from a state of, oh, well, she doesn't hurt the kids. She's, nice. She's a good person. And she doesn't, do anything that would be violent or, completely grotesque or anything like that. And eventually it got to a point where it was like, all of those people do these things. And they like it. And I think that's kind of intriguing. But yet, I don't think I would like it. So, I really draw a distinction between Katy Perry, who is the stage persona that everybody sees, and the person that's behind that mask. Because she does. She draws a distinction herself, at least once, that I know of, in one of her interviews. And so I, carried on that same path, that same route. And so Catherine Bott is my image of the Sam's reflection of my belief about who might be behind the stage persona known as Katy Perry. And that's how obsessed I got. So it's like you develop these crazy like intricacies when you go psychotic, especially if you start trying to work your way out of it, like trying to figure out, hey, is this actually real? You start to rationalize things. I know who this person is, I swear. So you develop all these crazy notions about these people. And then it's like, oh, well, if that's true, then this other thing must be true. And then if that's true, then this other thing must be true. And you can go so deep into these rabbit holes. So Catherine Bott is not a person. Catherine Bott, who the fuck knows who Catherine Bott actually is? No one knows. I don't even know. And I'm the one that invented it, because it's not a her. It's not a person. It's an image that I've created in my head of who I believe that someone else might be. But I don't know. Who knows? And so during the process of me going psychotic, I deeply developed this obsession with Catherine Bott. And Catherine Bott went from being like a one-dimensional character as just some underling in Charles's troupe. Fine, Sims. So it went from it being like, I'm going to check in on this person once every month to I'm going to check on this person like like 16 hours a day. Every single day for years, just because. So, and I'm kind of exaggerating. It wasn't 16 hours every single day. It was, it was only 16 hours a day. Some of the days, it was, it wasn't like every single waking moment, but it was like most of it. And if I wasn't thinking about her, I was about to start thinking. And I can't say her, the image of her that I had, because I don't know who she is. I try not to. I tried not to. So I don't have to deal with any of that anymore. But I did at the time, and there was this whole thing. And it was because, I think it was because I had broken up with Chelsea. And I had a heart-shaped hole that I needed to fill, and so I just, I didn't, who better to do it with? Some random person that you've never met that you could make up anything, and they could be perfect because look at them, they're rich, they're famous, they're beautiful, they're complex. You could make anyone you want, and you could worship it and be like, yeah, that's who that person is. It isn't. That isn't who they are. It has nothing to do with who they are. It would probably be offensive and creepy and disgusting to this person. And you realize these things after it's over, but during it, it doesn't, while you're in the thralls of a psychosis, you don't recognize those things. You don't see that. And so like now, and that's what's such a thing to me about all these reference frames. What do we take as being given as true? And what do we question? So like all of that stuff has been going through my head because of all this crazy shit. So it isn't just to, be used as some philosophical abstract questioning with the book, because it has pragmatic value. I believe that if I develop this book enough, that I'll be able to draw myself out of psychosis and be sane again, by changing my referent. My referent is not this image. My referent is not this feeling. My referent is, and then I can change it to whatever I want. Right now, it's the objective world I'm trying to focus on. I'm looking at my computer, my laptop, looking at the number 9 on the keypad, and I've got some bacon and I'm kind of hungry. Okay, now I'm coming back to myself. I'm doing some crazy shit because I'm drunk. Hold on, I'm gonna eat. I mean, while you're here, you may as well, I guess. Listen to me eat. So, you know, people will say, oh, so-and-so is crazy. It's easy to do. And they're crazy. I'm crazy. But yet, look at this. I'm going to open this up and it's going to blow up in my face. You've lost 20 bucks. Yep, there it is. But, no, really, though, look at this. And you tell me, oops, if this is crazy. So, you know, people say, like, so-and-so is crazy. And they think that it's like, oh, every single thing that this person thinks is wrong. Every single thing that this person does is stupid. Everything that this person believes is completely out of fucking whack. Then how the fuck did I make $1,200 since the end of June? So I'd say the beginning of July. Yeah, right? Almost exactly at July 1st. Okay, so I've been doing this for about 6 months. Now, yeah, you can see there was a little drop off here. Okay, $200 drop off. Yeah. But I not quickly, but I consistently picked it up. Okay. So, I mean, you can see a pretty consistent increase here. We go from $85, we get our first little win, $161. Hey, that's not bad. That's double what I had before. And then you get the next one, $258. Well, holy shit. And then it goes up to $420, and then it goes up to $680, and then it goes up to $850, and then it goes up to $1,085, and then it drops off down to $900, and then it comes back up and up and up and up and up and up. And the point of it is that, yeah, you know, I sound like a complete fucking wackaloon, but yet there's your proof for 6 months solid. Other than this one little area here where I dropped off, I've made a consistent return. And even with that little drop off there, it is little. Because how much was it? $200 that I lost? Yeah, about $200, less than $200. And then I slowly but surely increased my profits until I got all the way up here. And so it's like, you know, you can't just write someone off as saying that they're completely nuts and then be like, well, you know, they have no idea what they're doing. And they just don't live on Earth. There are no people like that. And even during my absolute depths of my psychosis, I was still capable of rational thought. It's not irrational linkages between premises that breaks down during a psychosis. It's the premises themselves that get warped during a psychosis. And I stress the fuck out of that for a reason, because that's the difference. That's the distinction between crazy and sane. Everybody's rational. Even crazy people are rational. The linkages between their premises are rational. The problem is the premises themselves are empirically unsound. That's what being crazy is. Being crazy is when you detach from empirical, objective, physical reality and you say, I don't believe that. I believe something that's transcendent to that. Even if it violates the empirical world, I'll believe it instead of the empirical world. My belief in it trumps the empirical world. Now, When you do that in love, it's okay. When you do that in religion, it's okay. But when you do that with your life, it becomes un-okay. Doesn't that sound crazy? So, what I think it is the reason the empirical world exists, not the reason that it exists, the meaning that I find in it is it's predictable enough that I can use it as a solid, measuring tool while I'm alive. But the problem is, when my body dies, and it's the first thing to die, when my body dies, and it will, where is that going to leave my soul? My soul will no longer have an empirical thing to touch. I won't have an empirical reference anymore. So isn't it crazy that we use the empirical world as our reference when that's the first thing that we're going to fucking lose, and it's a certainty that we're going to lose it? Isn't that crazy? So when we look at these psychotic episodes, you have to keep in your head that if you really want to understand what I was going through, you can't be like, well, he just became irrational. I did not become irrational. I became unempirical. I retained my rationality, but I lost my empirical soundness. I lost my grip on empirical physical reality. My rationale was kept well intact. That's the really weird thing that throws people off. They're like, no, that can't be. It is. That's how it is. Now, I don't know if that's how it is with every single psychotic. I don't know if that's the way that it is with every single schizophrenic person. I don't know. But from my dealings with them, because I've talked to several, because Angkor Wat was a loony bin, and that's where they lived, 2 buildings away from me, basically next door neighbors. And they would come over all the time and smoke pot with me and talk with me and stuff like that. And I can tell you, they have rationale. They have the same type of rational thinking that everyone has. But they believe things that are just simply false, that just don't actually exist. Or they'll get caught up in things that aren't really relevant. Or they'll believe things that are like subjectively ridiculous, like that everybody's out to get them. Well, I mean, you can't prove that that's wrong. That could be a rational thing to think if you keep having the same kinds of problems over and over and you can't explain why. Then, as far as you can tell, it is because there's some kind of crazy conspiracy theory against you. And if you say that that's the case, that will get other people to start looking at you suspiciously. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. So yeah, it's not a problem with rationality. It's a problem with empiricism. Being too loosely defined or held to be irrelevant. If it's too loosely defined, then it's like, well, Catherine Bott really is Catherine. If it's too loosely defined as to what a person is, well then, you can then make that jump. If the definition is wide enough, it will include more things in it until it starts to include things that don't really make any damn sense. So the categories get too wide, man. That's what it is. And because the categories get so wide, when someone tries to make a decision, they really can only make a decision if it's binary, because the categories have gotten so wide that there's only room for like two. Either this or that. And that's why you end up with these crazy ass religious experiences, because everything has been squished into an absolute. It's been reduced, everything has been reduced to a binary. Pure evil, pure goodness, no in between. You know, and of course there's degrees as you approach that, but that's like the worst of it. And when your categories get so fucking huge that they include basically everything in them, it starts to sound like gibberish, because basically everything is everything at that point. And when you get there, hey, that might be accurate, but it is not empirically sound. So nobody that uses empirical soundness as a referent can follow you. And even further, nobody that has had experiences that aren't yours can follow you. So only you can follow you anymore, because everything has gotten reduced down to whatever it is that you're experiencing. And it's the mind's way of withdrawing from the world, because the world doesn't make any sense to it. It withdraws from the world so that it can focus all of its energy on trying to make sense of itself. So it can try to make sense of its own story. Given all the things that it believes to be true, what it would say it knows, what is a rational, remember they're still rational, way of linking all of these crazy factoids into a cohesive story? Now, you would be surprised at how difficult that becomes the more that you add on to it. So, the way out of a psychosis is to reveal the empirical unsoundness, the unreality of what it is that they believe to be true. You do that by drilling down deep into the specifics. You said they said such and such, but you also said they said so, and you can't put so and such in the same thing, because that would invalidate each other. If you catch them in an irrational argument, they will be confronted with their own insanity. If you try to do anything other than that, you're lost. But if you can somehow use, because they still retain rationality, they don't ever lose that. They only lose empirical soundness. They only lose their ability to tell what is actual from what is only possible or artistic or whatever. So you get them to look at that, and then they'll snap out of it. They'll come back to reality. And I guess I'll just leave it there, because I've been going on for a long time. So, goodbye.